going to do is I'm going to go to each of them in turn. I would ask you to keep your intro to a couple of minutes, please, to make sure we've got as much opportunity to hear the voices of our audience as possible. And I'm just going to go through the order that they happen to be on my sheet. So Julian, would you like to go first?
Well, thank you very much, and it's very good to see so many people here. This is bigger than when we had it 5 years ago, which is excellent. It's good to see so many familiar faces from the Papworth Trust, from Voiceability, from the LifeWorks campaign we successfully ran, and many other places. And I've spent the last 5 years fighting for Cambridge, getting more money for our schools, more money for our NHS, particularly for mental health, as you mentioned, trying to sort out housing and transport. But I've also done a lot on a range of disability-related issues, because this is something which affects me as I grew up. I have long-term experience of this. My mother is registered blind, and so when I was little, I used to read her bedtime stories, because it was very, very hard for her to be able to do anything for me like that. And so I got used to the idea of both visible and invisible disabilities. If you met my mother, you might not notice that she can't see you if she looks at you. But also the issue about physical and mental disabilities, that both of those are there, some of those are ignored too often. And so I've done various things. I've looked at, tackled the work capability assessments that many of you will, I fear, be far too aware of. These were initiated by the last government. Had I been an MP at the time, I hope I'd have seen the problems and voted against it, but I wasn't an MP then. And I've worked, for example, with Rethink Mental Illness to make sure that they are done better for people with mental health issues, because currently they are awful at assessing it. They're reasonably good at working out if you can walk somewhere. They're not so good at working out if you are actually going to walk somewhere. We've seen some changes. I see Max in the audience. I went to a work capability assessment, or rather didn't, because it turned out even the new company didn't have wheelchair accessible rooms available, which is pretty shocking. I also led the fight against some of the proposed changes to the disabled students allowance, because I think people should be able to study freely, regardless of their disability. And we worked to introduce an access to elected office fund, so that people with disabilities can become councillors, can become members of parliament. I've worked with Scope, looking at the cost of disability, with guide dogs, where I've been blindfolded. I've been around central Cambridge in a wheelchair. There is much, much, much more that we can do, that we must do. I have a long list here, but I'm out of time. And I hope we'll talk about most of it later on. But this is a really important issue. So thank you for coming, and make sure that all of us think about this and talk about it.
Thank you very much, Julian. Daniel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Vicky. I'm Daniel Zeichner. I'm a Labour candidate. I live just around the corner in Victoria Road. And I came to Cambridge as an undergraduate to study history of the Kings. My first job was at Shire Hall, and it's fantastic to be here again. 5 years ago, we sat in this room and had a really, really good discussion. And I was very struck then by just how well informed the audience was. And we had quite a spirited debate, I think, about going to some extent about how society treats disabled people. I work for a trade union, Unison, that has a very strong disabled members group, and part of my job is to promote their work with parliamentarians. One of the important things to understand is how you see the world. And the social model of disability has completely changed, I think, people's understanding. It's not about disability, it's actually about the way society operates and the things you can do to overcome the obstacles for people. And actually, if we change the way society sees disability, it's amazing what can be done. And I think it's been inspiring to see just what disabled people have been able to achieve over the last few years. The Paralympics, a fantastic example. And yet since then, a lot of it seems to have gone away. It seems to be just about those people who are top athletes. And I have to say, I think the way disabled people have been treated by this government over the last 5 years has sometimes been bordering on the cruel, frankly. I think the changes to the benefit system, particularly the bedroom tax, which has particularly hit people with disabilities. And I can make this absolute cast iron promise to you today, that if I'm elected, and if Labour's elected in a couple of weeks, scrapping the bedroom tax will be one of the very, very first things we do. Now, by chance, today is the day when Labour has launched its manifesto on disability issues. So we've got a whole range of things that I think will probably come up in the discussion as we go through today. But to me, this is one of the most important issues. I'm delighted that you are here, right on the doorstep. It's very good to see so many of you who I've worked with over the last few months. And I have to say this to Anne from LifeWorks. I think the campaign that the LifeWorks campaign ran was an inspiration to everybody and showed that when you're really determined and you build support, it's amazing what you can achieve. So I think it's a message of optimism. When people are optimistic and hopeful and people come in and work alongside, it's amazing what can be done. We should never lose our optimism. And I suspect I'm going to go away feeling more cheered from this hustings than many of the ones I go to. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Daniel. Rupert.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm Rupert Reed. I'm the Green Party MP candidate here in Cambridge. And can I start by saying it's fantastic to be here in what seems to be a genuinely inclusive hustings. We've got somebody signing here, we've got the stuff appearing on the screen here. I'm afraid this doesn't happen at most hustings, and it's really, really encouraging and moving and gratifying in certain sense that it's happening here today. We heard from the chair about the problems that disabled people have in voting. There are, of course, some practical things that we could probably do to ease those problems, such as we in the Greens think we should be making it much easier for people to vote online. But you know what, and this is the main point I want to make in my opening remarks here, it's no good making it easier in practical terms for people to vote if they don't have anything that they really want to vote for. And I agree with a lot of the remarks that Daniel has just made. But I think it's also true that if you actually look, and I would encourage you to do so, if you actually look at the Labour Party manifesto, it is really pretty discouraging in relation to some of the issues which are going to, I think, be central this afternoon. Scrapping the bedroom tax is good, I totally agree with that. But it's important to be clear, Labour's manifesto is an austerity manifesto, just like the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. They're going to carry on with cuts to local government. They're going to carry on with cuts to social security. They're going to carry on with cuts that are going to affect some of you, if they get into government by themselves. What I'm hoping is going to be the outcome of this election is that a Labour minority government will be dependent upon the votes in Parliament of anti-austerity forces. SNP MPs, Plaid MPs, Green MPs. So I'd encourage you to think this afternoon about voting for any of those three parties. I'll leave you to make up your own mind about which of those three you'll vote for.
Thank you, Rupert. Chamali.
Thank you, Vicky, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting us all here. 16 years ago, I was studying on Hawthorne Way at a school called Cambridge Seminars, which has now moved to Newmarket Road. So it's amazing to be back in the surroundings, and my headmaster, the year after I left, acquired some office space just further down the road here. So it's lovely to be in this environment. Chamali Fernando. I'm 36 years old and I've been a barrister for 12 years, representing people from all walks of life, sometimes the most vulnerable in society, those facing loss of their job, loss of their home, collapse of their business, or even facing jail. I'm also an attorney to the State Bar of New York, and of course in New York there's lots of disability discrimination legislation coming through which is influencing some of the work that we do in Britain as well. I'm a policy advisor to set up an international court for the environment, so the environment is something that's really high on my own personal political agenda. Since being selected as the candidate, I have gone around the constituency with my team and we've been knocking on doors, listening and learning to the issues that matter to people on the doorstep for our city and for our country. I've also engaged with work with Cambridge Area Partnership, which sets up apprenticeships between business and schools. But particularly my focus has been to guide them towards opportunities for children with special needs and the opportunities for them to be able to access apprenticeships. In the Conservative Party, we actually believe in transforming practice, policy and attitudes so that hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities can access employment. We want to move towards a system of full employment in the next Parliament. It's possible, and it means that everyone who wants a job will be able to get a job. Last year alone, 140,000 disabled people were able to access work. We want to go further, and that we can only do with your support. I've been talking to a few of the staff at the Papworth Trust just this afternoon as well, and some of the ideas that have come forward from this organisation are so important and are actually very easily achievable. We just have to put our heads together and actually have a strong advocate for Cambridge City to be able to punch well above its weight. My goal is to make Cambridge the global benchmark for a greener, fairer and more sustainable society.
Thank you. Well, some really, really fascinating opening remarks.